Welcome to Martha Runs the World, a podcast with a new take on running, fitness, and all things health-oriented. I'm Martha Hughes, your host, and each week I present a new topic that is of interest to all runners. Hi, and welcome to episode 351 of Martha Runs the World. Thank you so much for joining me this week. I appreciate it each and every week. There was a time when the highlight of my month was receiving the new issue of Runner's World magazine. I loved it so much. As soon as I would get it, I'd drop everything if I could, and I'd sit down, breeze through it, just look at the pictures, not read the stories yet. And then later, when I had a chance, I'd read through a few of the stories, and then I'd go through it a second time and a third time and check out everything, including all the ads. It meant that much to me. It was my favorite publication. Now, that was quite a long time ago because Runner's World hasn't been what I would call a good magazine for a very long time. Unfortunately, running magazines, in fact, all magazines, are artifacts from a past age. I know there are a few magazines that are still out today, but the quality of the magazine industry is just not what it used to be. I myself had an underground music zine, as they were called, a metal zine, for many years, and I only stopped doing it because the market for printed magazines was drying up and it was costing me way too much money. And I broke even doing it for a few years, and then it started costing me a lot of money. I realized that the last year I did it, it cost me a few $100s, and I just couldn't afford to keep it up anymore. If I could afford it, I probably would have kept it going for a while longer, but no, I had money. I needed money for other things, like food, rent, that kind of stuff. So I couldn't keep it going. Now, maybe you're thinking to yourself, this is just a part of progress. The printing age is over. And okay, you're partially right. I don't buy magazines anymore, printed magazines. The ones left cost as much as books do, and I'd rather buy printed books. Maybe you have a Kindle and you don't buy printed books anymore. But I had a Kindle for a few years, and it's just not the same. I missed the feel of a physical book. I missed turning the pages. I missed holding the book. I love books, so now I buy real books. I do try to buy used books or books on sale as much as I can. So I try not to buy books at the whole price, unless it's an author or a book that I'm really looking forward to. Or it's a running book that I need for the show or that I want to read for the show. Then I'll pay the whole price. But looking at past magazines, and I thought about Runner's World, and then I thought about all the magazines, the running magazines that have been in history, and I just thought I might want to do a show and talk about them in history and what's still around. It doesn't hurt to look back at some of the historical publications that we've lost, give them a nod, especially the ones that meant a lot to so many of us. That's what the show is about today, and it's also about why a particular magazine declined so much. And I'll talk about why Runner's World declined so quickly, and they really went downhill so very, very fast. It didn't have to either. It really didn't. And it isn't just because printed publications declined so quickly. They decided to go a direction that I thought really hurt them. And they didn't have to do that, but they did. All right, now magazines started in the 1600s. The first magazine was a German publication, Erblich Monats Ertudungen, and I'm sure I totally slaughtered that name. I apologize. That ran from 1663 to 1668, and that was Johann Ries's German publication, and it was the first true magazine. It had discussions and literary works in that publication. The Journal des Sçavans, it was published in 1665. That was a French magazine. At least I got that right anyway. focusing on scholarly content. And the Philosophical Transactions was in 1665 as well. That was an early English magazine published by the Royal Society. Le Mercure Galant was another French magazine published in 1672. That was a first periodical of amusement with news, stories, and poetry, and that was widely published and widely read. The coining of the term magazine dates back to 1731. The Gentleman's Magazine was Edward Cave's publication in London. He is credited with creating the term or inventing the term magazine. The meaning of magazine. Cave used the term to describe a storehouse of information derived from the Arabic word makazine. First American magazine was in February 13th, 1741, marked the appearance of America's first magazine, Andrew Bradford's American Magazine, or a monthly view of the political state of the British colonies. That's a long title. Published in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Like its closest successor, Benjamin Franklin's General Magazine, and Historical Chronicle of all the British plantations in America, another long title, which appeared in print in the same city 3 days later. It bore the date of January 1741. Both magazines were short-lived. Bradford's publication met its demise in 3 months. Franklin's only survived 3 more months. Both were forerunners, however, of the approximately 100 magazines that would eventually be founded in the American colonies and the numberless periodical publications that have succeeded them since. So they were the start of something big. Now, as far as running magazines, the magazine Distance Running News, founded in 1966 by high school student Bob Anderson, who mimeographed copies from his home in Kansas. And if you're old enough, like me, you can still smell the paper that came off mimeograph machines. Just take a moment and think about that. It's like that scene in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Yeah, you know that scene. You know what I'm talking about. It was the Distance Running News was a precursor to the modern-day Runner's World, which it became in 1970. The publication grew alongside late 20th century running boom, covering distance running as it became more popular and eventually was acquired by Rodale Press and later Hearst. Now, the origin of Distance Running News, as we said, it was Bob Anderson. He started it in 1966 with a very small investment, intending to create the world's distance running magazine. In 1970, the name was changed to The Runner's World, and soon after that, simply Runner's World. Runner and writer Hal Higdon had been writing for the magazine since its second edition. In 1969, Anderson changed the name of the magazine to Runner's World, as I said. He brought on Joe Henderson as chief editor and moved the editorial offices, now named World Publications, to Mountain View, California. Runner's World thrived during the 1970s runner's boom, and even in the face of the competition from the New York-based magazine The Runner. Now, the boom in the 70s was inspired by 1972 Olympic marathon winner Frank Shorter. Rodale Press acquired the magazine in the 80s and continued to develop it. In the 80s, Bob Anderson sold a portion of his publications, including Runner's World. Anderson also published a lot of books about running, and he distributed them through Macmillan Publishing. Bob Rodale of Rodale Press purchased Runner's World in 1985 and moved the offices to Emmaus, Pennsylvania. Now, Henderson did not move to Pennsylvania, and he stepped down as editor, though he remained associated with the magazine until 2003. Random House bought the Running Log, which was published under the Runner's World name for decades after the sale. In 1986, Rodale also bought The Runner and merged the two magazines, the Runner and Runner's World together, keeping the Runner's World name and some writers, including Amby Burfoot, which became the editor, which he was until 2003. This was the height of the magazine's excellence, I believe. Burfoot was an amazing editor, and he really helped out the magazine maintain first and foremost running, which you will see they actually lost sight of eventually. But with Rodale Press, Runner's World was just such a top-notch magazine. Runner's World remained strong through the so-called second running boom in the late 90s. It remained strong in the 90s and was still a terrific publication. It had everything to do with road running, pretty much, and it was just so much fun to read. Really, really top quality. Some of the regular writers and the staff at that era included Bart Yasso, Dr. George Sheehan, whom I covered in a past episode. There was a women's running column, and Jonathan Beverly. In 2004, the magazine had a full redesign. Since then, the magazine has won several awards, including being ranked number 1 on Adweek's Hot List, number 6 on Advertising Age's A List, and has been recognized for having Creative Team of the Year. And most notably has been nominated 3 times for National Magazine Awards. Well, okay. In February 2007, Rodale acquired Running Times magazine and website and combined both brands in 2015. And that was the start of the magazine's decline. Hearst acquired Rodale in 2018. Runner's World offices moved from Emmaus, Pennsylvania to Easton, Pennsylvania. The new office included a testing lab called the Test Zone, which allowed visitors to see Runner's World and bicycling product tests. But it was this purchase that put the proverbial nail in the magazine's coffin, in my opinion. As time went on, the magazine kept to running, but the people focused had to have something else. They couldn't just be runners. They had to have certain appearances. They had to either be a person of color or a person of a particular ethnic variety or something. Something else had to go on. They couldn't sexual orientation or something. They couldn't just be a runner. They had to be something else, protected class, something. But they rather than just their running, they weren't just runners. They were a runner, but look at this person. They can, there had to be a different focus than just their running. DEI took effect in all of the articles that Runner's World had, and it just seemed that running took a back seat. It's wonderful to have a variety of runners. I applaud that, but you don't have to have it in every single article. And it seemed the requirements for who they talked about were just kind of off kilter. Accomplishments should be for everyone, and that's not what happened. And that wasn't the only difference that I didn't care for. Much of the magazine was now focused on new shoe reviews. It seemed every single magazine that came out, every single issue that came out, half of it was new shoes. I get the new shoes are coming out all the time, but you don't have to dedicate half of the edition. I shouldn't say, I said episode before. I'm sorry. I'm so used to podcasts. Edition, half of each magazine edition that comes out. It doesn't have to be half shoe reviews. I know you're trying to please your advertisers. I know shoe companies are a big part of your advertising, but please, your readers are a big part of who are your readers are who you're making this magazine for, aren't they? Do you not care about your readers? So it's like, yeah, there are so many shoe reviews. Bottom line is Runner's World forgot who reads their magazines. I don't want to get myself in trouble here, so I'm gonna leave that alone, what I said before, I made my point, so I'm not going to belabor that point. But maybe they just only started caring about their advertisers. Maybe they only started caring about certain people, certain parts of their readers. Maybe they don't care about all their readers. Runner's World is still in print. It is now printed only quarterly. There are other magazines besides Runner's World. Now I'm going to talk about some of them I already talked about. Some of them were already bought up by Runner's World. So I'll list a whole lot of magazines here, and I'll talk about what happened to them, if they're still being printed or published, and if you can still buy them. And once you can still buy them, I will have links to on the website, martharunstheworld.com. The running times, track and field news, women's running, Runner's World UK, trail runner, ultra running, Canadian running, marathon, and beyond. Let me take a closer look at each one and see what's going on. The runner and distance running news were combined to make Runner's World. Running times, the authoritative voice for the dedicated runner. The masthead reads, the magazine explores training from the perspective of top athletes, coaches, and scientists, rates and profiles elite runners, and provides stories and commentary reflecting the dedicated runner's worldview. The mission statement was not written for the eyes of the current runner. Launched in 1977 by Ed Ayers, Rick Platt, and Phil Stewart, three serious distance athletes whose aim with Running Times magazine was to appeal to the fanatic of the sport as well as to the elite and sub-elite competitors. It was a niche product for 38 years, the latter decade, with a company, Rodale Press, that produces far more popular publications such as Men's Health, Women's Health, and Prevention, as well as the most subscribed to running magazine in the world, Runner's Magazine. It's kind of dated, right? Which is Rodale's fourth most popular product. And this is a little dated, but I'm just giving you what it said on the website. A Rodale spokesperson told Athletics Illustrated the difficult decision to no longer publish Running Times will enable Runner's World to broaden its ambitions. So that's what happened to Running Times. Track and Field News, the publication is still being printed. You can subscribe to get both the online and printed version. It's printed 12 months a year. Women's Running Magazine is still in print in the UK. It's published 6 times a year by Outside. Runner's World UK is still in print, printed by the Hearst Corporation. Trail Running Magazine stopped printing in 2022, and unfortunately, the quality had declined over the last few years. Like Runner's World, more focus was on the runner's origins than the sport itself. So I think if a publication forgets who their core readers are, they aren't going to be able to keep publishing. So maybe that's what happened. I'm not sure. It's still online. It just doesn't print anymore. Ultra Running Magazine is still in print, and it prints 8 times a year. Canadian Running is still in print and going strong. I don't have how many times they print annually, but I have a link to their website on my website. Marathon and Beyond Magazine. Marathon and Beyond was a bi-monthly international magazine from 1997 to 2016 dedicated to marathon and ultra-marathon running. Published in a magazine book format, it focused on technical and practical advice and serious, in-depth content for long-distance runners rather than reviews or race reports. The publication's goal was to go beyond other running magazines by providing extensive coverage of topics unique to long-distance running, with articles often written by coaches, scientists, and experienced runners. It wasn't slick, it wasn't fancy, no shoe reviews, no sucking up to running shoe companies. I'm looking at you, Runner's World. But really good, in-depth interviews and race reports. I really enjoyed this publication, and I was very sad to see it go. It was terrific. It really was the best of the best. I think when it came out, when I finally discovered it, it was in the last couple of years of its existence, unfortunately, and I missed a lot of the years that it came out because I just wasn't in those long distances in that time. But it was a really, really good one. And that's a look at the different running magazines, and I don't know what I would think that in the future, they're probably gonna be even less and less printed magazines. I think probably more and more books. I think books are probably the future of running. It probably costs as much to put out a book as it does a magazine, and why not just put out a book? But that's, that's my opinion. I'm not sure, but we'll find out what's going on, and we'll see what happens in the future as far as the printed word in running, which is a shame because I like magazines. I think they're an amazing source of communication, and especially getting the word out and running. You can get a magazine out pretty quickly. Costs a lot of money though these days, unfortunately, especially a really slick one. All right. So how is your running? How are you doing? I'm doing pretty good. By eating is better. I'm doing okay. I have managed to not eat as much sugar as I did before because of my root canal. I've managed to stay off sugar pretty well, so I'm doing pretty good. I got a really nice run in yesterday. That was cool. So I'm going to go out to the Presidio today and get some miles in. Yeah, so I'm doing all right, and I'm looking forward to this Thanksgiving turkey trot, and then I'm going to ramp my miles up because I want to do a couple 50Ks next year. I've decided. I'm going to do the Ruth Anderson in October, and I'm going to do a self-supported 50K in San Francisco as well. So I've got a couple big distance races that I'm going to do. I'm probably not going to attempt a 50-miler until I move, which won't be for a couple of years. Yeah, I'm moving out of San Francisco in a couple of years, but that won't be for a little while. So I will let you know what's going on about that when it happens. But other than that, things are moving along here. It was really nice when I went out yesterday morning. I could tell the air is a little chillier. We're getting into fall. It's still warm here. Fall is not my favorite time of year. Spring is my favorite season, but fall's kind of hard because there's been a lot of loss in my life in fall, so especially October. So October's kind of a hard month. We'll get through October and then on to the rest of fall and then winter, and it's all right. Yeah, I do okay. It's not that difficult a time, but it's just kind of it's a little bit more sobering, shall we say. But we get through it and just go on. But it's nice to run in this weather where it's just a little teeny little bit of a chill, and then because it doesn't really get cold here anyway, but teeny little bit of a chill, and then start my run in, and then the rest of the run is nice and warm. All right, so that is it for today, and sorry for my rambling at the end there. Wasn't sure how to end it. I never know sometimes. It's like, is this a good place to end? Okay, I'll stop here. As you can tell, it's not scripted. Nope. No AI in this show either. No AI at all. All right. So that is it for today's show. And if you want to email me, it's martharunstheworld@gmail.com. And the links for the different magazines will be on the website at martharunstheworld.com. And until next week, let's tie up our shoelaces and go for a run.